Right, Shalom. Foremost, I'd like to give all praises and glory and honor to Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Bahashem, Ukakadash, and the Heavenly Father, the true name is Yahweh, and His only begotten Son, Bahashem, in the name of Hamashiach, Yahweh Shai. Those are the true names in the ancient Paleo Hebrew, the Last Gadash, the Holy Tongue. And I say Barak Adam to the elders and apostles, Ba'akim, Ba'akbar, and I say Shalom. And this is a prophecy updates as of January the 7th, 2026, on this Wednesday night. And this is the book of Matthew, chapter 24, and verse 6. It says, Ye shall hear of wars, rumors of wars. See that you be not troubled, for all these things must first come to pass, but it is not yet. So we see in it's a news article. I'm from looking at the website from RT.com. And it says, this is from RT.com as of January 7, 2026. And it reads, it says, RT captures destruction in Lebanon after Israeli strikes. It says the president has condemned the deadly IDF attacks that amending the international efforts to uphold a ceasefire, right? Because they had that ceasefire ever since last year of November and all the way to now. So ever since they trying to uphold the ceasefire, try to hold on, between Lebanon and the Israel Defense Force, and you've been having, ever since then, been seen having airstrikes over in the area because they supposedly, been targeting the headquarters from Hezbollah. It says, as the IDF attacks that came amid international efforts to uphold a ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah. It says Israeli strike on southern Lebanon on Tuesday that left 2 people unalive, but presumably Hezbollah militants, with the multiple other attacks reported over the past few days. An RT crew on the ground witnessed a mass destruction left in the wake of the latest Israeli aerial assaults on the neighboring country. It says RT Lebanon Bureau Chief Steve Sweeney traveled to industrial area of the town of Galatasaray, if I pronounced that right. It says near the coastal city of Sidon. I believe it's spelled Sidon, if I pronounce that right. It says where the aerial Israeli attack grasped a multi-story building. He witnessed emergency crews working there through the rubble at the site. It says with the nearby buildings and shops also seriously damaged. And it says during a press briefing on Monday, Stephanie Dodrick, a spokesperson of the UN Security General Antonio Guterres, confirmed the deadly Israeli strike, as well as at least three other attacks in southern Lebanon. Yeah, so these are wars and rumors of wars. Go to the next verse. And this is Matthew's 24, verse 7. For nation shall rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. Right? Hezbollah versus the Israel Defense Force. That's what you call nation against nation and kingdom against kingdom. It says, there shall be famines and pestilence and earthquakes in diverse places. Right? Just like yesterday, you had a 6.7 earthquake over in the Philippines. And then days before that, I believe it was like a 6.2 earthquake over at southern Japan, if I'm not mistaken. So these are signs that we're going to be seeing the uptick of wars and rumors of wars, nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom, the increasing famines and pestilence and earthquakes in diverse places. So get to some more news articles. And once again, yeah, get to some more news articles. It says U.S. And this was earlier today. This is another news article from RT as of January 7th, 2026. It reads from World News. It says UK says it provoked a supported. It says UK says it's provided support of the US siege of the Russian tanker. It says London has confirmed its involvement in the US-led capture of the Russian flag vessel off of Scotland. It says the UK, which the United Kingdom, provided enabling support to the U.S. military siege. It says, and this makes sense as well too, because we got the NATO-led black. The NATO-led black from the United States, and then you would have Europe, Europe and what's the I believe it's the UK. They've been having tensions against Russia as well too. And I believe it was France. I think it was another country, France and the UK. I believe they're going to send some troops over there in the Ukraine if they have a peace deal. But ever since then, tensions have been heating up between the Russian-Ukraine situation. I just want to add a side note to that. It says the oil tanker was intercepted on Wednesday in the international waters northwest of Scotland. The Pentagon claims the vessel, formerly known as Bella 1, has been involved in the alleged violation of U.S. sanctions. It says the U.S. insists in the U.S. during the operation. UK assisted in the U.S. during the operation at Washington request. The department minister said in a statement, "Our UK armed forces showed skills and professionalism in support of a successful U.S. interception of the vessel Bella 1 while on its way to Russia. This action forms as a part of global efforts to crack down on sanctions busting." It said, right, it's kind of similar to, I think it was like two more oil tanks was sieged by the United States off the coast of Venezuela, and they were sanctioned as well too. So that's something that will potentially start more of these oil tank wars, and these are economical wars, these are political wars, these geopolitical wars, these are tariff wars, and these nuclear wars is only going to heat up between these nations. And that's why it makes perfect sense as I got into that Matthew's the 24th chapter, wars and rumors of wars, nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom. It says that Moscow has announced the capture of the vessels. The country's transport ministries stated that the Marinalia has received a temporary permit to fly the national flag on December 24th. The ministers accused the U.S. of violating the UN interventions of the law of the sea, which ensure freedom of navigation in international waters. The tanker made its international headlines last year when it was first targeted by the U.S. military after allegedly approaching Venezuela. At the time, because you still got Venezuela, our allies, Russia still to this that day. As of yesterday, you had the United States demand uh, Venezuela to cut ties immediately with China and Russia. What's that's not going to happen? And it says the ship's crews refused to allow the U.S. Coastal Guard servicemen on board heading to the Atlantic instead of the U.S. forces in pursuit. It says during the chase, vessels charged in a same, it says its name and flag. Shortly after the capture of the Marinia, the U.S. said it had seized another tanker in the Caribbean Sea. It says the Sophia. It says the U.S. military describes the vessel as a stateless, sanctions, dark fleet motor tanker. It says the interdict vessel, the MT Sophia, was operating in international waters and conducting sea activities in the Caribbean Sea. The U.S. Coastal Guard exhorting the MT Sophia to the U.S. for the final disposal. The U.S. Southern Command has said. So that's another sign that potentially, once again, Russia heating up Russia against the United States. Another sign of wars, rumors of wars. Yep, it says U.S. seized Russian oil tanker. It says, yep, U.S. forces they was attempt to board a Russian oil tanker. And so, yeah, it's definitely heating up. It says U.S. service members wounded in a Venezuela raid. Also, it was U.S. soldiers was injured, and then I believe some Cuban soldiers that helped aid assisted Venezuela. I think they was injured, and there was like 60 of them unalive. It was a total of 80 of them was unalive, I believe. And it says, and it's another what you call upwards people were at Luke 21 verse 25. And this happened earlier today, and they even have a heavy protests that are taking place on there as well too over there in Minnesota. I would say central Minnesota. It says, and the crazy part about it, it was like 5 blocks. What happened to George Floyd in 2020? That's the crazy part about it. This is a news article from January 7th, 2026. It reads, it says the U.S. Immigration Agency fatal shoots woman video shows. It says Secretary of Homeland Security Christine Miller accused the victim of the domestic, or they call her accusing that 37-year-old woman accusing her of domestic work. Wow, that's crazy. Because as you was looking at the video, it seems like she was trying to drive off. It seemed like she wasn't trying to run into the ICE agents. Understand it was self-defense, but had the way looking at that video, it seemed like she was trying to turn the other way, the opposite direction. It seemed like she wasn't trying to hit the man, nothing like that. Even though he was holding onto the car latch, trying to open the door, but she was trying to drive away. So how she was trying to attack him, but she was driving away. It says the U.S. immigration officer fatally unalived a woman in Minneapolis on Wednesday, prompting protests and tension standoff between the Democratic won Minnesota and the White House. It says the incident occurred east of 4th Street in Portland Avenue. It says where law enforcement officials previously clashed with protesters. It says videos from the scene shows Immigration Customs ISE agents approach a dark SUV. It says stop in the middle of a snowy road as agents tries to open doors. The driver puts her vehicle in reverse and attempts to drive away. Yeah, that's why I said attempt to drive away. It says the agencies pull out a handgun and fire 3 shots. And after when the vehicle drove off, it crashed into 2 other cars parked along the side of the road. It says the victim was identified by her family as a 37-year-old Renee Good. And it says it was an act of domestic T-word, and the officer and Yoris acted quickly, defensively, shooting to protect himself and the people around him. She said, "Yeah, this is the book of Saint Mark, the 3rd chapter. This is Saint Mark chapter 3 and verse 23. Then I'm bring up the Isaiah the 19th chapter. This is Saint Mark chapter 3 verse 23. And he called them unto them and said that parable, how can Satan cast out Satan? St. Mark chapter 3, verse 24. And if a kingdom be divided, except the kingdom that stand. Right, so this modern day kingdom that we're currently in, we're seeing the modern day kingdoms are being divided, especially with the seditions among the nations, and then the seditions of citizens rising, which that leads to power. Like I said, the second Ezra 15 chapter, bring that out as well too. This is verse 25. And if a house be divided, except the house not stand. Right, so if a house be divided, except the house not stand, and we see in the house of Edom is really being divided. And this is the book of Luke 21. Yep, it's the Gospel of Luke 21 and verse 25. This is Luke 21, verse 25. It says, and there shall be signs in the sun and the moon and the stars upon the earth, expressive nations will perplex the rich world. Right, that's what we see in the modern day time that Yahushua spoke about in the red letter of Luke 21, verse 25. We're seeing the increasing signs of the expressive nations, uncertainty, seditions, uprisings, nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom, wars, rumors of wars, rivalry with the famines, pests, and plagues. And these are signs that Yahushua spoke about, and he's showing us as well too. And we see the signs of the sun and the moon in the skies, and upon the earth, expressive nations will be placed in rich waters. So that's what will continue to increase. And this is the prophet Isaiah, chapter 19, verse 2, because America resembles modern day spiritual Egypt. You look at the back of your dollar bill, got the pyramid symbol. You look out throughout North America, resembles modern day spiritual Egypt. And this is Isaiah chapter 19, verse 2. It says, now will set the Egyptian against the Egyptian, and they shall fight everyone against his brother, everyone against his neighbor, city against city, and kingdom against kingdom. Right, that's what we're seeing. And we're seeing preview signs of it's going to come into full effect. And this is the book of Second Ezra. I mentioned I was going to bring that out as well too for edification's sake. And shalom to your Akima Akbar that's in the comment board, and Yahweh Shema Shalom Rakatasi will yours your household. I say shalom. And this is Second Ezra chapter 9 and verse 3 from the apocryphal books of the Holy Scriptures. And it reads, it says, therefore when there shall be seen earthquakes, uproars people world. Right, so that's what we said. We're seeing increasing earthquakes and uproars people world, with those recent protests that are taking place over in Iran, and those recent protests that's taking place over there in Minnesota as well too. After that 37-year-old lady was unalive by one of those ICE agents. And this is the book of the Second Ezra, Slock slip a ton of words. Yep, it's the book of Second Edges, chapter 15, verse 15. It says, for the sword, the expression draw of nine. Right. For that sword, the sword and expression draw of nine. We know the modern sources. The modern source was for the sword that expression draw of nine. And one people should stand up and fight against another sword's hands. Right. Especially over here in America, modern day Babylon the Great. The version of Babylon, able seeing protesters rising against their leaders in power and protest and sedition. So that's something will continue to increase. In verse 16, and we see that around the world as well too. Verse 16, but there shall be sedition among men invading one another. They should not regard their kings or their princes, and of course, actually stand in power and righteousness. We'll see. So we see the seditions of them. While organizers hold these events, people usually say there was much larger interest today in everything that happened in Minneapolis. Out here tonight, we've seen a lot of Chicago police officers on the ground today marching just outside the crowd, working to keep them safe from passing traffic. And as they were walking after that vigil and protest, there was still a small group out here, still praying and singing around some candles that they have lit right by the arch. Right. And after when this will wrap, the group is slowly beginning to take off. We're back in the Little Village neighborhood tonight. I'm Courtney Spinelli, WGN News. This is book of Second Edges 15 verse 16. For there shall be sedition among men invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor their princes, and of course action stand in power. Right, so they shall not regard their kings nor their princes, and of course action stand in power. Last time I checked, it was a recent news article. I think it was about like an hour ago. I think the unalive toll went up to like 35 to 40 people were unalive. Those protests over there in Iran. So it's only going to continue to increase. It's heating up. Just like that recent incident happened over at Minnesota. I just read that news article from RT.com. So we're gonna see citizens rising against their leaders in power, and we're gonna see more signs of that. And this is the book of Second Edges 16. Second Edges 16 verse 7. It says, for there shall be in every place in the next cities a great insurrection, right? It's an uprising. So we look at the definition of insurrection. For edification's sake. The definition from insurrection is a noun. It says, one, a violent uprising against the authority of government. Uprising against the authority of government. It says insurrection, which is an uprising. And this is Second Edges 16 verse 7. For there shall be in every place in the next cities. Right, for there shall be in every place in the next cities a great insurrection, uprising, which we see in signs of that, previous signs of that, with these protesters that's taking place over here in Minnesota, and different protests and seditions and uprisings that's taking place in different parts of the United States. That's going to increase as we enter in that Isaiah 19 verse 2. That's going to come to full effect, and that's going to be taking place around the world as well too. For there shall be in every place in the next cities a great insurrection, uprising upon those that fear Yahweh. Second Edges 16 verse 71. They should be like madmen, spirit not. Right, we've been seeing previous signs of that with these patrol troops and ICE agents and stuff like that. It says they should be like madman, spirit not, but spoiling and destroying those that fear Yahweh. Verse 72, Second Edges 16 verse 72. For they shall waste and take away their goods and cast them out of the houses. So this is what we're about to enter into. And this is Luke 12 and Luke 12 verse 51. Salakia. This is the Gospel of Luke 12 and verse 51. And Shalom to the Akim, or Akwaf that's in the common board once more, and I say Shalom. And this is the book of Luke 12 and verse 51. It says, suppose ye that I come to give peace on earth, I take neighbor division. Right, so Yahushua says, suppose ye that I come to set peace on earth, I take neighbor division. Verse 52, and forth from henceforth there should be five one house divided three against two, so it's three. Right, so that's what we're seeing divided between the nations. In verse 53, the father should be divided against the son, and the son against the father, and the mother against the daughter, and the daughter-in-law against the mother-in-law, and the daughter-in-law against the mother-in-law, and the daughter-in-law against the mother-in-law. Right, just like you had, because I did a sit-down lesson on it, a couple of hours ago. That incident happened over there in Waverly. It's called Waverly, Tennessee. You had this this woman. She was taking care of her grandmother, and her three kids. So she had unalived her three kids and her grandma as well too, and she unalived herself. I believe that was like a 4 or 5 people in total was unalived. So that connects right along with that Luke 12 verse 53. So we're gonna be seeing that a lot here in America. We're gonna be seeing that around the world as well too. Because Scripture says, Yahweh Shai says in the book of Matthew, the 24th chapter, because iniquity shall abound, the love of nature was cold. Right, so iniquity shall abound, the love of nature was cold. So all this iniquity is gonna abound. Yeah, Luke 12, verse 53, it says, the father shall be divided against the son, and the son against the father, the mother against the daughter, and the daughter against the mother, and the mother-in-law against the daughter-in-law, and the daughter-in-law against the mother-in-law. So we're going to see that more about these times as we're entering into 2 Timothy's third chapter. Because, what was that? Yeah, 2 Timothy 3, verse 1. It says, also in the latter days, perilous times shall come. So we're starting to enter in those times as the days progresses on, because we're living in the modern days of the signs of the times. And let's see. Oh, good. What else? Some more news articles. Yep. So as I said, this was earlier today. It says the U.S. Immigration Agency fatally shoots a woman over there in Minnesota, and the Secretary of Human Security, Kristen Norton, accused the victim of domestic tea while she was trying to drive away. But they said that was domestic T word. Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, that's crazy. They call that domestic T word while she was trying to drive away. And he was trying to use the latch of her car, trying to open it up while she was trying to drive away. And they said that was an act of domestic T word. I mean, I understand the agent was trying to defend themselves, but they look at that as domestic T word while she was trying to drive away. That's ridiculous. Hey, that's what's current administration for you. But continue on. All right, let's go to news now. Get some more prophecy updates. It says Star Moore says, yep, this is from the Washington Times. This was published 16 hours ago. It says Star Moore says Britain, France will send troops to Ukraine if peace deal is reached. Either way, the likes of it seem like no peace deal is going to be reached. But we're going to see more tensions heating up. It says this is from the Global Post, published 16 hours ago. World News. It says Iran security forces use tear gas in Iran as the unalived total rises. Part which I mentioned, I believe it's like 35 to 40 plus people are unalived over there, the protests over in Iran. And this is another news article, I believe that's taking place over there in Aleppo or Syria. For the past couple of days, we've been seeing tensions heating up over there in Aleppo or Syria. Some read this news article as well too. And this is from the longwarjourney.org, published January 7th, 2026 by Ahmad Shakwalini, if I pronounce his name right. It says a Syrian army besieged Kurdish neighborhoods. Because I believe it was a news article. I checked on my feed from the Associated Press because I spoke about that earlier today when I was up there teaching. About you had like a lot of people, I think the Syrian people, they was fleeing those certain areas because you had heavy clashes of the I think the pro Kurdistan groups going against the government soldiers of Syria, I believe. It says the Syrian armies besieged Kurdish neighboring in Aleppo following clashes. It says residents of the Shali Al Farasia evacuated after a Syrian army imposed a full closure of the neighborhoods. It says units of the Syrian army has surrounded the Kurdish uh, majority neighborhoods in the Melsa if I pronounce that right, in Aleppo or Syria, marking the latest escalations after a series of clashes between Syrian government forces and the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces. It says which controls 30% of Syria's territory, and the al-Shis and the Syrian Democratic Forces affiliated in its internal security forces. The Sheikh Makwas and the Afro Sharia neighboring neighborhoods are considered, if I pronounce that right, are considered close military zones. After 3 p.m. today, we urge civilians, residents to stay away from the position of the Syrian Democratic Forces. The Syrian Army's operating authorities announced January 7th, and he also stated that security and stability will soon be restored in the Al Sharbasia and Shameki and Mexico, um, Maxfa neighborhoods in a manner of them appropriate to protect the residents from the abuse of the Syrian Democratic Forces. It says a local source claimed that 200,000 civilians have left the neighborhood of Aleppo following the Syrian government closure of the two neighborhoods. The Syrian Democratic Forces issued a statement declaring that the neighborhoods will continue to remain fortress and steadfast and unbreakable. It says, adding that the resistance will continue until the protection of the land, of the people, and dignity, and signal urgent residents of the two neighborhoods to resist in advance of Syrian government forces. It says that both parties have exchanged accusations over attacks in Aleppo in the past 24 hours. The Syrian government forces reportedly that the Syrian Democratic Forces target residents and neighborhoods in Aleppo using Mokhtar's snipers to target roads. The Syrian Democratic Forces aimed at the Syrian government factions carried out several attacks using tanks and armed vehicles, which were repelled by international security forces with the support of local residents. So yes, still a lot of activities and proxy tensions, proxy wars and escalations between the neighboring areas over there in Syria, especially throughout that whole region. Yep, this is bring out that Matthews. Yep, Matthews 24:6 once again, and ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you be not troubled for all these things, but first come to pass, but it is not yet. Verse 7. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. Right, so that's what we're seeing. The nations are rising against one another, and the kingdom against kingdom, which goes to Ethnos. And there should be famines and pestilence and earthquakes in diverse places. So, as it says again, Syrian besieged Kurdish neighbors in Aleppo fall in clashes. Right, because you got the Syrian Democratic Forces going against the Kurdish groups, I believe. Right, the Kurdish led, you have the Kurdish led Syrian Democratic Forces. So they both clashing against one another. So it's what you call uproars of people will. So that's only going to continue to increase. Bring out some more news articles from Newsnow. It says Tim Walz says Minnesota is at war with the federal government after a fatal ice shooting. Got uproars of people will. And at Isaiah 19 verse 2 as well too. Let's check out some more news articles. It says tensions rise as army militarized attempts to assert control in Venezuela. Oh yeah, and that was the spirit too. What was that day before yesterday? They had some type of coup was trying to attempt over there near the palace over there in Venezuela, the presidential palace. So we're gonna be seeing more and more increasing uptick of the uproars being more on a daily basis. It says that protesters in Iran provides a window for U.S. and Israel intervention. Denmark. It says Denmark is telling President Trump to stop threatening to seize Greenland. They're not going to stop. They're going to continue to push forward with it. It says Beijing Seoul ties warm after Korean president secures promise from China. So these are another signs of wars, rumors of wars. Because I believe what was that day before yesterday that North Korea has launched their missiles after the president of South Korea met with met with met with China, if I'm not mistaken. It says Beijing met with I think somebody of Japan. I'm gonna say met with the president of Japan or prime minister of Japan. I'm gonna say because you've been having ongoing tensions been heating up between China and Japan as well too. And then you had one of the presidents met over there in South Korea. I mean, one of the president of South Korea met one of their allies, and then say that was comes after Kim Jong Un launched one of his largest missiles. So that shows an indicator right there that the tensions between North Korea and South Korea is only going to escalate, which has been happening throughout the years ever since Trump's first term in office. Now, once again, he's back in office for the second term. Tensions been heating up ever since then between North Korea and South Korea, while we're on with South Korea, Japan, United States versus North Korea. It says Beijing Seoul ties warns after Korean president secures promise from China. It says Z oppressed to sides with him, China against uh, Takalashi, Japan. It says from Seoul of South Korea. It says South Korean President Lee Jae-myung returns Wednesday from a state visit to China, where he had discussed contentious matters including yellow sea terror issues. Beijing bans a K-pop and Pyongyang refused to commit with Seoul. Yeah, Pyongyang refused to commit with Seoul. As I mentioned again, tensions are going to stir up between uh, North Korea, neighboring North Korea versus South Korea. It says Mr. Lee trip includes the summit of the banquet of President Xi Jinping as well as a sit down with Prime Premier Lee Queen. Though the allies to the U.S., Mr. Lee has made improvements in relations with Beijing prior since talking in office last year. Yeah, so leave it at that. See if I can close these get back to some more news. Yep, it says U.S. forces has seized a Russian flagged oil tank one bound from Venezuela. Also, was headed towards Venezuela. Okay, so that comes after yesterday about the United States wanting to, because I believe the United States and Venezuela they signed a deal to have like some oil barrels to be given to the United States, and then you had on top of that you had the United States demanded Venezuela to cut ties with Russia and China, and so now you have this oil tank siege from the United States was a seized by a Russian flag oil tanker once was bound for Venezuela. So that's only going to stir up more tensions. It says Aleppo, Syria, fighting legal civilians unalive, displaying thousands. Right, just like our first article I just brought out over in Syria. So it's definitely heating up throughout Syria, over there in Western Asia. Let's see. It says Netanyahu tries to calm tensions after Israeli bus run over a Orthodox small hat during a protest. Yeah, because I think he had to be like in his teenagers. He had to be like a teenager, and you had those Orthodox small hatters was protesting over there in Israel, and then that small hatter teenager, he was underneath, almost underneath a bus, and the bus kept on going while he was screaming. And then, the small hatter protester was trying to save him, but he was unalive. So this was called another sign of uproar. So people were these protesters. And there's definitely protests has definitely been heating up throughout the years recently, especially over in Tel Aviv and different parts over there in Israel. Right, we got some more news articles. Let's check out the. It says Saudi Arabia allies in Yemen out that he backed separatists from government. Right, because you've been having the latest airstrikes. Because the tension's been heating up ever since 2 weeks now over there in Yemen. Because you've been having once again to reignite the tensions. What's that been going from 2015 and all the way into now? Because I believe in the year 2021, the tensions had de-escalated between the armed forces of Yemen and a separatist group over as well too, while they was going against the coalitions of Saudi Arabia and their allies. Now this is escalated once again. So recently you had the Saudi Arabia using airstrikes against those separatist group and against the Houthi rebels once again. Yep, it says rising UAE and Saudi teachers laid bare in Yemen. Yep, so tensions are heating up over there in the area. It says Yemen separatists accuse Saudi Arabia of betrayal as a pro-Riyadh forces advance. Yep, so these what you call wars, rumors of wars, nation against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. It says Putin. This is from the Miami Herald. It says Putin ally issues a third war warning after NATO countries declaration. Yep. What's that? Joel, the third chapter. Wake up the mighty man. Let all the men of war. Right. Let all the men of war draw near. Let them come up. Joel 3 verse 10. Let the weak sound strong. All this is leading to third world war. Russian military's procurement is a warning for you. It says 4 killed in a clash between Syrian government forces and Kurdish fighters in Aleppo. Right, I read that already. So you haven't seen the uploads before. It says NATO's Northern Shield has a hole. The UK can't build any warships. Russia sends ships to protect oil tankers. That's huge right there. Russia sends ships. I think warships. I think that's what they're trying to say. Yep, this is from the UPI News. It says Russia sends ships to protect oil tanker being pursued by U.S. forces. So that's another sign that tensions are heating up between Russia and the United States. And this is Shalom Wanathan, Shalom, yeah, how about Shemar Shabrak, to you and your household, and Shalom Rebecca sister, Shalom Aqua sister. And this is Joel. Yeah, I'll get to that. Joel, the third chapter. This is the prophet Joel, chapter 3 and verse 9. It says, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles. Right, this is being proclaimed among the Gentiles as the prophet Joel was mentioned. Yeah, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles. Prepare war. Wake up the mighty man. Let all the men of war draw near. Let them come up. Right, so as we said, this is being coming up, being gathered up over there in Western Asia. About Jehoshaphat, Armageddon, Armageddon. So as we've been seeing heavy clashes over there in Syria throughout that whole region, and then you've been seeing tensions are heating up between uh, Saudi Arabia and their coalition forces going against the separatist group, and Hezbollah of the Houthi rebels over there in Yemen as well too. So throughout that whole region of Western Asia, tensions are only going to spark up. That's going to lead up to the third one as well. Joel chapter 3 and verse 10, it says, beat your plowshares and the swords and the plenty hooks and the spears and the weak sound strong. Right, just like you had the president and their affiliates from Iran. I believe they made another announcement once again, sending threatening warnings towards the United States armies, said they potentially threatening Iran, threatening to use nuclear strikes against the Israel Defense Force and the United States Army. So we're definitely seeing the tensions already heating up between the nations. And then you still gonna have the Israel Defense Force dealing with a multi-front war over there in that area, over there in Western Asia. It says, of claim he did some of the Gentiles prepare war. Wake up the mighty man. Let all the men of war draw near. Let them come up, right? Let all the men of war draw near. Let them come up. Joel 3, verse 10. Beat your plowshares and the swords and the pony hooks at the spears and let the weak sound strong, right? Just like North Korea launched their missiles, which they've been doing for the past couple of years. As we see the tensions are rising up between North Korea and South Korea, and Japan, South Korea, and the United States over there in the Korean Peninsula. As we see in China versus Taiwan, that's been heating up. And this is the book of Revelations 11 verse 14. I'm close out. And this is the book of Revelations 11 verse 14. And Shalom to the Akia or Aquaf once again. And peace and blessing you and your household as always. Revelations 11 verse 14, it says, the second will pass, behold, the third will come quickly. Right, so the second will pass, behold, the third will come quickly. We're getting all God one. So with that, hopefully this was edifying of prophecy updates as of January the 7th, 2026 on this Wednesday night. And once again, shalom to the brother Yuwanathan, and shalom to the Aqua sister, and peace and blessings to your household as always. And with that, I'd like to give all praises and glory and honor to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Karkadash, and the Heavenly Father. True name is Yahweh, and his only begotten Son, Bahashem, in the name of Hamashiach, Yahweh Shai. Those are the true names in the ancient Paleo Hebrew of the Rosh Hashanah, the Holy Tongue. And I say Barakathon to the elders and apostles, Wa'akim Akwaf. Until next time, I'll say Kum Yasharala in the Bible Ball. Shalom. Hey, Shalom, brother. You want to Shalom, brother.